Another blowout incoming, plus the 2025 recruiting class is looking to land their biggest fish. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just wanted to come up to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate all of the support. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn women's and men's basketball, the hoops capital of the world. And we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. And to show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project. Just sent Kevin Solomon a check earlier this week, and they're sending, I believe, 50 kids to the XL Center tonight for the UConn men, also playing DePaul. So that is a fantastic thing. We're super excited about that. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's bring in Bella Tamano of Hoops Cap of the World Substack. Let's get her in here. Hey, let's do that now. And also a contributor to Locked On UConn. All right, UConn versus DePaul. Let's be real. This does not look like a competitive game. Yep. UConn is 25-1 all time against DePaul. The last and only DePaul win coming in 1983 before Gino Auriemma and Doug Bruno even took over their programs. Since then, 25 straight wins for UConn, including last season's absolute demolitions, 88-51 at home and 104-67 on the road. So is there any reason to believe this game will be any different?
No, Mark, I think you said it perfectly. Last year, series sweep, 30-point victories, 30-plus point victories. And looking at UConn this season, I mean, besides Notre Dame and USC, they've won every single game by double digits. And they're a team that's averaging 80 points, holding their opponents to 50 points with about a 30-point margin, roughly. And just kind of looking beyond that, if you look at who they've both played head-to-head, UConn played Villanova, dominated. They put up 100 points, okay? DePaul lost to Villanova by 11. Looking at that stat alone, I mean, I don't think there's any chance in any world, that DePaul knocks down UConn tonight, right? Like the other thing is that I look at it, it's like, the old Herb Brooks speech. If we played him 10 times, they might win 9, but not this game, not tonight. Not this game, not ever, okay? DePaul is not taking down UConn. I believe the spread's like 33.5. I'd book that.
Take it.
I'd put a lot on that. I talked about it last week. Take it against Villanova, and I think the same goes for this week. I think the UConn coasts and looks forward to, what's left in their schedule.
No, absolutely. And to be fair, DePaul has overachieved this season. They picked 9th in the preseason Big East poll. They're sitting at 6-3 in conference despite losing legendary coach Doug Bruno to a medical leave. So huge credit goes to interim head coach Jill Pizzata. And she has made some key tactical changes. They've moved away from their full court press and 3 heavy offense. They are focused now on attacking inside and have taken the 8th most 2-pointers in the country. So major shift there. The problem is they still can't shoot, right? They're shooting under 40%, bottom third nationally, and only scoring about 64.6 points per game. And defensively, even worse. Opponents shoot 44.3% overall inside the arc, and outside the arc, outside the arc, 50.5%, which is insane. So their opponents are shooting 50% from 3 and 44.3% overall. I think you're right. I think if we're looking at this as a 30-point spread, I think it actually could balloon to about 40 points just because it's so tough if you're betting on this game to look at it from the perspective of, well, that's a lot of points, 33. But it's also UConn. I gave you some stats here. A team that shoots under 40% against UConn, they only average 64 points a game. I think you could actually look at this game and say, whatever the over-under is for DePaul's points, you might want to take the under on that as well because UConn's defense is pretty damn good. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think in this game, if we're both in agreement that this team is going to be an over 33-point victory, does this team even break 50 points tonight?
Honestly, I think the one thing that I really look at with what I think UConn is going to reach in terms of point total, and then what I think DePaul is going to reach. I look at back to last game against Creighton. I feel like that was a game where they started really slow, and I'm sure, at the half, Gino lit a fire under them. I think the same goes for this week. I think Gino said to him, hey, like, let's look at this game as a game where we can really build, and look at this as a game where, Creighton didn't exactly go our way in the first half. Let's just go out there and dominate. And I think they want to do the same thing defensively. I think they want to say, listen, like, Creighton, I think they could have held them to a little bit less. I think this is one of the games where they say, okay, like, this team, we have to, I think they're like, a lot of times, especially when I played basketball, again, I've talked about this before, nowhere near to this kind of caliber, but coaches will put up, okay, what are our objectives for the game? I guarantee you one of the objectives is let's hold them under 50 points tonight. And I think that's what's going to be written on the whiteboard is, that's do we want to get, just say hypothetically, do we want a day off of practice tomorrow? Hold them under 50. Let's go out there and let's have a day. Let's get everybody involved, and let's be able to get, Aubrey wasn't able to play in Creighton. Let's make this a game where she can get a little bit more of a significant role, and let's get her, the ball in her hands to score and get her back. So I just think that's kind of the goal today. The goal isn't really whether they're going to win or lose. I think exactly like you said, I think this is a game where they hold them under 50 points. I think you can definitely take the under for their points. Now, the over-under collectively, I think, is like 144. That scares me a little bit. That'd be the only thing that I would be like, I think UConn, I don't think UConn's going to have a crazy 100-point performance. I think they'll score like 82, and I think I think final score will be 82-41.
Okay.
So that
you heard it here.
Yeah.
Hopefully that works if you're betting on the game. Last question. I read something from a friend of the program, Maggie Vinoni, in Connecticut Insider. She does great work about how they've kind of, and this is kind of a oddball question, not really, but it's kind of it's about the kind of shift in the amount of sets that UConn's been running. And they essentially have said that they've kind of slashed a bunch of the playbook where that's allowed UConn to play a little more freely. What do you think about that? I think for me, I think sometimes, especially when there's a lot of moving parts with Paige coming back, AZ in and out of the lineup, now Aubrey kind of in and out trying to get herself back, potentially a Caroline Ducharme, sighting tonight or the next game.
Yep.
With a ton of moving parts, Gino made a comment. He said we gave them a bar menu instead of a full whole menu.
Sure.
For them to kind of make reads quicker. Do you like that? I do.
I absolutely do. I think it allows players like Sarah to not have to adhere to a certain formula. Instead, she's able to go out and make plays herself, along with her and Paige, along with their passing abilities this year. I think in years past, they've needed to be a little more clean cut by the book because they haven't had a player like Sarah Strong. I think having Sarah back, having Sarah in your lineup along with a player like Paige is more of like, let's go play some pickup basketball, because we're like, there's no need to, run plays and get certain shots when Sarah can drive to the hoop if you need her to. And you have a player like AZ coupled with Paige that, again, are playmakers. And there's no need to call certain things out of sets because you have players that are able to just see the court in a certain way and make things happen. So I love it. I think that's great. And I think that shows you have more talent than you do basketball players, because yes, basketball players get you a far way, right? But I think just having athleticism and talent like you do in Paige and in Sarah, as much as they're great basketball players, but they just play the game, right? They just play to what, the defense gives them, rather than playing, what do we need to run to get a basket? And
Sure.
I love it. I love it. I do. I completely agree on that. I think it's great. And I think it's going to help them go a longer way in the tournament when teams don't let them set certain things up.
Love the analysis. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to bring Bella back for the rest of the program and talk about UConn's 2025 recruiting class. Could they land another star? We'll find out coming up after the break. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP. You can even do the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to get in the action. You could even do the length of the national anthem, over under. From the thrill of kickoff to the final whistle, live betting is also a big feature that I personally like to do. It's right in the app. It's super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with Bella Tamano, Hoops Capital of the World, and, of course, a Locked On UConn full-time co-host contributor. All right, so this recruiting class, we've talked about it a few times. We've had Alfred Corriette on, who's an international recruiting expert, because we do have a couple of international stars, and we're trying to land the biggest international star from Canada in Agot Makeer. But who we have in the mix right now is we have the number 27 overall combo guard from ING Academy in Florida, Kelis Fisher, who follows me on Twitter. Thank you, Kelis. Gandy Malou-Mamel, number 72 overall. We've had Blanca Quinones, who kind of helped her migrate from Ireland, and her family migrated from the Congo to Ireland, and she'll be the first Irish Congolese player to ever play for UConn. And her story is incredible. I'm excited about her upside. We're going to talk about her as we get going. Another person that I'm super excited about, a woman that is dominating the Italian league, Blanca Quinones, the Ecuadorian wing, playing in that Italy's top league, unranked, because this is just they're kind of weird with the international rankings. I don't think anyone that watches any of her clips is going to be worried about Blanca Quinones and her impact that she could have at UConn. But the one major name is still on the board, and that's Agot Makeer, the number 4 overall prospect, McDonald's All-American. She's a 6'1" wing from Canada. She's now playing at Monteverde Academy in Florida. The finalists are us, UConn, the big dogs, South Carolina, and Michigan State. What do you think UConn's chances are?
Honestly, I can't lie. I would love to, come on and say, I think this could be a great recruit for them. I think, UConn has the edge, but I just can't lie. I just think with UConn's, current track record, them not winning the national championship, I think in the past has gotten them so far with recruits, and them, not being too successful is going to hurt them. And I think South Carolina's incredible success is going to be awesome. I also think, Dawn Staley is a huge pull. And the other thing you have to look at is, I feel like, in my opinion, when you look at any sport, right, especially I want to look at football for a second, okay? When the Patriots had Tom Brady, a lot of people weren't saying, oh, I want to go to the Patriots because I want to play for the Patriots. A lot of people were saying, I want to go to the Patriots because I wanted to play with Tom Brady. For UConn, it's I don't want to go to UConn, to play for UConn in some cases, but I feel like yes, that is true to a certain extent. Don't get me wrong, UConn's an incredible program. Who wouldn't want to play for him? But I think the biggest factor in the last couple years in recruiting is I want to play with Paige Beckers, because she gives you a lot of exposure, whether it's, TV time and just things like that, to be a little flashy for some of those younger players. That's something important. And I just think, like, playing with Paige, it is a great thing. You're going to learn a lot of things about basketball, and you're going to become a better player because of it. Now, I think, Sarah Strong kind of will take on that sort of recruiting incentive, but I do think that she's not 100% there yet, just because I don't think she brings that swagger. I think we've talked about it. She has aura just based off of her playing, but off the court, we've talked, like, she's just a little, right. She's got that, like, awkward sort of edge. She's not super confident in herself yet. So I just think that not having Paige next year, you're losing a little bit of that recruiting edge. And I just think that South Carolina's success in the past, long story short, is gonna draw her in rather than UConn.
Yeah, no, it's all good points. I think you mentioned, Sarah, I think the counter would be you're kind of replacing the, one of the top players, if not the top player in the country for at least a few years in her time at UConn, with potentially the next top player in the country in Sarah Strong. And also the type of I couldn't even imagine Agot Makeer and Sarah in the same backcourt or front court, because they're both those type of players. And I just think it would be I also like you have to look at a couple of the tea leaves, right? She played at Crestwood Prep in Canada, same as Aaliyah Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Ran AAU for Kia Nurse, EYBL ball. She's familiar with UConn's culture and players. They've been recruiting her probably since she was like 13 years old. So while Dawn Staley, I'm sure, has done similar stuff, it's kind of like we're still UConn. You know what I mean? So if you ask any young girl growing up, like, who's your dream school, unless they live in South Carolina, unless they live in Louisiana,
that's fair.
They're probably going to say UConn, or Indiana. They may say Notre Dame. So, and even then, like, to use Paige, and I know that's she's not going to be there next year, but when I went to the game against North Carolina, there were signs, and I asked Paige about how's that make you feel, that there are people that are like, hey, I'm a Tar Heel by blood, because I grew up in North Carolina, but I came here to watch you. So I think you're going to start seeing that still with UConn, because let's face it, I know Paige Beckers puts butts in seats, but so does UConn. If when she goes, next year, and she goes and plays for Dallas, I still think UConn, if they play Creighton at the Cintas Center, or not the Cintas Center, I keep saying that, at the Omaha Child Health place, Cintas is for Xavier plays. If the attendance isn't going to drop off much,
right?
So I think you're right about like the swagger aspect, but I think you also have to. I think the key part is like you get sold a package. Like Dan Hurley sold Braylon Mullins and Darius Adams. Hey, you guys coming together at the same time, you're going to perform the best shooting backcourt in the country. So if it comes down to UConn and South Carolina, let's say Michigan State's out of it. Now they'll probably get it because I said that, right?
Right.
But let's say it's down to the Gamecocks and the Huskies. I think Gino and Chris and everybody else has got to say, look, do you want to go to South Carolina and just be another kind of name that that people don't really know? Because honestly, man, like if you're a diehard women's basketball fan, that South Carolina has Ashton Watkins and Phil Wiley and other players on that team. But if you're just a casual women's basketball fan, you know who Paige Beckers is, who AZ Fudd is, who Gino is. Like, so I just feel like that UConn still has that edge when it comes to the recruiting aspect. You're still going to get exposure. You're going to get more of it at UConn, just based off of the type of culture they've created. So I say all that to say, I think she's going to pick something. I think she's going to pick South Carolina.
I do too. I do too. And I can't disagree with that. The only thing that I did hear you say was her coming in to kind of like take Paige's place. Not take Paige's place, but like on the court wise, kind of
next.
Play be the next, the next up from Paige. The only thing that I'll say is college basketball is a little bit different than professional sports, but a lot of times people look at it and be like, I don't want to fill their shoes, because I hate to say it, I don't think anyone can fill Paige's shoes, and I don't think anybody will for the next 5-ish years. Like the same thing with Sarah. I think she's going to do great things for the program. And like we said, I think she's better than Paige this year, just based on her impact and her overall skill set. But based off of people traveling 10,000 plus miles for Sarah, I just don't know. And again, it's just too early to say that. But that's the only thing is, does somebody like that want to get that sort of popularity? Paige has, stalkers. People have stalked her, and I think if she was on a team like South Carolina, I hate to say it, I don't think that would be true.
Yeah.
So sometimes
you're right.
People just don't like to be in the limelight like that, and I think UConn just automatically puts you in that just because of their dominance in the past couple of years, even though that's dropped off. And I think playing in a school like South Carolina, again, for some reason, like they have incredible talent, but for some reason, I feel like their coverage, at least for me, I feel like is more focused on like what Dawn Staley has done for the program rather than what individual players have done. I don't know. That's just kind of the way I feel. That's just a sort of
part of that too is in college, whether it's women's or men's, the coaches are the personalities, so that the
Yeah.
players may win the games, but like it's always Dawn versus Gino.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was Gino versus Pat Summit. Like
Sure.
her name's Tara Vanderveer versus Gino, like whoever, Muffet McGraw, like so. To go on and on. So so I think some of that is not overblown, but it's basically just media driven.
Sure.
And I think the biggest thing though is when I think of South Carolina, I think of what Dawn Staley has done there, and she's essentially just stacked a bunch of talent and in a more winning way. She's done what John Calipari did on the men's side, even though he only won that one national championship with it, where he just said, I'm going to get as many 5 stars and as many big time recruits as possible. And just kind of, and luckily for Dawn Staley and the women's side, no one can leave early. So she just gets a ton of talent and just goes boom, boom, boom. It's like level. And by the time they're seniors, they're incredible and they're dominant. And so that's what she's done. And Gino used to do that in the past, and he's still doing it to a certain extent. But I love what Gino's done. And he's going, okay, more of the American players are going to programs like Notre Dame, going to South Carolina, LSU, other places. That's fine. I'm just going to find people from all over the world. And in doing so, he got Blanca Quinones, who is going to be, if Agot Makeer picks South Carolina like we expect, Blanca Quinones is going to be an absolute monster. She is going to change the face of what UConn women's basketball is going to look like from an athletic perspective, even more so than Sarah. And I say that with the utmost confidence. And I'm going to tease what we're going to do for the next next piece, because this team, with Agot Makeer or not, is still going to compete for a national championship because they have a lot of pieces coming back. And I have a really big feeling that Gino is going to get transfer portal heavy next year as well, especially if he loses out on Makeer. Last thing, I know I've rambled on here.
I have one thing to say too before you.
Go ahead. But if they don't get Makeer, they've signed at least one top 10 recruit in 5 straight classes, and they've signed a McDonald's All-American in 11 straight years. If they land Makeer, that ends. If they don't land Makeer, it ends both streaks. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
The only thing I was going to say is you talk about Gino going after international players. There's an interview that has, it surfaces every once in a while. I'll see it come up where Gino's asked about, what's the difference between international and, American born players. And what he says, when you play in America, everybody's worried about playing games. They practice once a week and then they play 6 games on the weekend. And then he says over internationally, they practice 6 times during the week, and then they play 1 game. And that's why he feels like a lot of times international players are better. And I think in the past, there's been a lot of Canadian players. There's been a lot of international players. And I think that's just his new mindset. And I'm okay with that. And I think that's a little bit more of an old school mindset, because now with all this AAU tournament, things like that, and IMG Academy, I'm saying that because of Fisher and things like that, not to knock it, but a lot of it's just about, let's play games, let's get clips, and let's get highlight reels so that these college coaches see these things. But a lot of times they don't, you don't see the behind the scenes of working in practice. And that's why I think Blanca, yes, she was unranked when she was initially recruited, but she's already rose to, I believe, 72nd or 73rd in her class. And not only that, in just one season, her first season, I believe she averaged like 7 points and 3 rebounds. She doubled that number in her second season. So her ceiling is literally to the moon. And her floor, listen, there is no floor for her, because there is no looking down. She is only going to skyrocket. And again, I think that's going to be the steal of that recruiting class. And I totally agree with you in that aspect.
1000%. Next subject, next in the next segment, we're going to talk about, with all of the new recruits that are coming in, potential transfer portals. What's the 2025-26 starting lineup going to look like? We'll tell you what our thoughts are coming up after this. All right, this is your host, Mark Zanetto, on Locked On UConn. Bella Tamano, Hoops Capital of the World, also a co-host with me here at Locked On. All right, Bella, take us away.
So like we kind of teased before, we talked about all the way to the future of our 2025 freshman recruiting class. I think it's only appropriate if we touch on that to kind of take a look ahead to what that starting lineup may look like next year. Paige is obviously going to be gone. She's going to Dallas. I mean, almost 100%. No, I would bet my life she doesn't use that extra year of eligibility. Like you said, we may get some transfers. Some players may transfer out of UConn.
Yep.
Right. And I think the question for you, Mark, is who is going to be that starting five when it comes down to game one in the beginning of November? What 5 names are we going to hear get called? And I think is it going to be some of that freshman class, like you said? Can certain players squeak their way in like Sarah did this year, or what returns are going to kind of earn their keep, step up, and take one of those spots?
All right, so I put a lot of thought into this one. I think again, a couple caveats, as you said, barring transfers, barring people leaving, barring like surprise leaving. Like I don't think KK Arnold's going anywhere. Like I don't think. Obviously, Sarah Strong's not going anywhere. Janelle Elfie, those guys, right? So those are 3 of my starters right there. At point guard, I have KK Arnold. I have AZ Fudd coming back as my shooting guard. I have Janelle Elfie as my center. I have Sarah Strong at power forward. And then I have Blanca Quinones as my freshman starter at the 3. I think Blanca has way too much versatility to be coming off the bench. However, because and you talked about her uptick in offense and kind of her production prior to us kind of connecting and making and getting this show together. When I had Alfred Corriet on, who does a great job scouting international players for the Next, and he's also a beat reporter for the New York Liberty. So he talked to me about how Blanca is going to be Gino's going to love her in the respect that she works her ass off, and she also is defensive minded. She likes to get on the perimeter. She likes to get on the fast break. She's not going to settle for deep shots. She's going to get to the hoop. So she is kind of prototypical of what Gino likes. Plus, she's playing in the Italian league. Gino loves that. Come on, the Italian guy. That's why I think Blanca is going to come in and be a fixture right away. And I think you could switch out KK for Ashlyn, but then you really don't have like the prototypical point guard. I could see Ashlyn taking Blanca's place and having kind of a 3-guard lineup if Gino wants to not give the freshman the nod to start. But I think she's going to be undeniable like Sarah. That's my starting 5.
For a few of them, for my top 3, obviously Sarah, she's a lock. Same thing. I mean, she's probably going to win Big East Player of the Year. I have AZ, same thing. She's kind of, in my opinion, Paige's sort of mini me. I felt like when Paige went down, that's when AZ shined the best, especially this year. And when Paige had her ACL injury a little bit ago, and she's also top 5 in minutes. So it's, AZ and Sarah are 2 locks. Jana, same thing. I do think that she does have some things left to work on. But I think a whole off season is going to be really, really good for her. And again, I think her ceiling super high. I think she'll continue to grow. I also have my 2 other starters are a little bit different from you. I have Ashlyn Shade. I just felt like last year she played a way bigger role, and she also started this year when AZ went down. She was Big East Freshman of the Year, and she still had a great year this sophomore year. But I just think having AZ back and once everybody started to get healthy, her minutes just kind of, her spot on the bench became a little more warm, unfortunately, just because we had some better talent. And I do think she had a couple of amazing games this year. She had 17 in the first quarter against Iowa State earlier. She's also 4th in minutes right now. And 2 of the people ahead of her are 1, Paige, and 2, Caitlin Chen, which essentially, in my opinion, kind of, I don't want to say automatically gives her one of the starting spots, but I do think Gino really likes her, and he is super hard on her, but I think he's hard on her because he knows he can get a lot out of her. And then in my 5th spot, I'm giving it to Morgan Shelley, and the reason why I don't want to give it to somebody like Blanca or somebody like somebody like KK Arnold is because, one, for KK, I just feel like her place on this team is kind of in that Hassan Diarra 6th man spot, if you will. Just like, she's just better off the bench. She's really fast and she's tough for defenses. when she's playing really well. I think she's got a lot in her bag. I just think she's just not necessarily meant to be a starter yet. And maybe things will change, but I think in that first game, I just think it's going to go to Morgan Shelley. Also because of her height. Shelley's 6'2", where KK's, 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. And I think Shelley can shoot better than KK. I don't like, KK, besides driving to the rim and, being a playmaker, dishing passes out and making plays for other players on the court. I just would trust Shelley's shot. And then to your point, I think Blanca could make her way into the starting lineup later on in the season. But I think that first game, unless she has an amazing kind of training camp, amazing summer and fall, I just don't see her game one making it into the starting lineup. I could see maybe mid-December Gino going with that. But that's not to say that it won't happen. I just feel like right now, I think I give it to Shelley, and you just kind of put some veteran, players on the court, and then you say, okay, you give a player like Blanca, a player like Fisher, and you go and you look at them and you say, okay, like win that spot, give them some drive, light a fire under them to win, to kind of take a spot from a veteran, and I think that's good. That creates some good competition. So that's kind of the way I feel. And then I think we kind of touched on this before we started filming is I think the writing on the wall there's kind of the writing on the wall is there for Ice Brady. She had a promising freshman season, but I just don't see her fitting into this lineup, especially with the recruits coming in. And I just think she could be the one UConn player to hit the transfer portal. Beyond that, though, I think we retain everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if she'll be the only one. I think she's the most likely, just based off of her minutes dropping, and then you have someone coming in like Gandy, who's gonna play. Gandy is 6'6" versus Ice at 6'3", and what I've heard from Gandy and also from Kieran Quinn, who was on the show, is that like Gandy's like a legit 6'6", maybe even touching 6'7", where she's sturdy, she's also really fast. So she's not going to be an offensive, problem right away. Mm-hmm. She is going to be a defensive premise. She's going to be a rim runner. She's essentially going to be the things that I think Gino wants Ice to be. Yeah. So I don't. And here's something that when we had Adam Finkelstein on talking about Dan Hurley, because there's a lot of things that are similar between Dan and Gino. No one's ever going to run any of these women or men out of town. Yeah. But they're going to have honest conversations with them about whether or not there's, an opportunity for them here. So, I think that will happen as time goes on. But I think this is a cool exercise because I think these recruits are going to be really good for UConn next year, whether we get Agot Makeer or not. And then on top of it, I think whether it's your starting lineup or mine, that doesn't matter. I think it's going to end up being about how much this team gels and, the collective and how they take care of, the lost production of Paige. So, and I think they've got enough people to get that done. So, and it doesn't stop there. The 26-27, the 27-28 recruiting classes are starting to shape up too. So, all right, listen, UConn DePaul tonight. You said take the points. I agree. If you're watching this, hopefully I'm definitely going to get this out before the tip tonight. We're doing a live reaction show for the men after the 8:00 game, so I'll be up late tonight. Do join us if you want. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn for Bella Tamano. I'm Mark Snetto, asking you to stay locked in. Remember, it's not about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that can't be done any better. That's our goal every day. And as always, go Huskies.